On this edition of Let's Talk Cincy, honoring history and preserving legacy.
The United Colored American Cemetery is one of the oldest and most historically significant African American burial grounds in Ohio.
One of Ohio's oldest African American cemeteries is receiving a significant investment to preserve its history for generations to come.
This round holds more than history. It holds the story of a people who refuse to let their legacy be erased.
It makes us feel that this is something that can be accomplished, that can be done. And I think it's good for us to feel that we have a part and a role to play. Just as our ancestors moved us forward, now is this opportunity for us to move forward in terms of making sure all the funds are there, to make sure that their memories are preserved and shared.
Plus, a final salute to a World War II veteran who was also a history-making Marine.
He was definitely my grandfather, loving, and also a hero. I don't think I recognized the hero part of his life until I became older. He always was so hands-on and embodied this message of failure is not an option.
From WLWT, this is the Emmy Award-winning show, Let's Talk Cincy, presented by Western and Southern Financial Group. Put our financial strength behind you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Curtis Fuller, and welcome to Let's Talk Cincy. You know, one of my favorite quotes is by Maya Angelou. She said, "History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again." There are hundreds of documented historically black cemeteries throughout the United States, and many more that have been neglected and unmapped or lost beneath modern development. That is why a new partnership between Union Baptist Church and Fifth Third Bank is significant to preserve one of Ohio's oldest African American cemeteries located in Madisonville.
The United Colored American Cemetery is one of the oldest and most historically significant African American burial grounds in Ohio. More than a cemetery, it is a sacred place that preserves the story of African Americans whose lives helped shape Cincinnati, our state, and our nation.
My great-great-grandfather, my great-great-grandmother, my great-grandmother, and my grandmother are all buried at United Colored American Cemetery, and they're all close to each other there. So it means a lot to our family. It's their final resting place. It is a place where we have the opportunity to come and thank them for what they did that is allowing us to live the lives that we live. It was painful the first time I went there to see the state that their final resting place was in. It was very difficult because these are people who all my life I've heard stories about, and I've understood them to be good and kind people. And to see their graves the way they were, it was really difficult.
Walking these grounds many times and seeing the needs and praying as we walk those grounds that God would, in his supernatural ways, work upon all of our hearts and to give to us the miracles, and I call them miracles, that needed to bring to the point of where the cemetery is now and where it is headed, where it will be truly a cemetery that is restored, revitalized, and preserved as a witness of all of those who laid there, of their life's work, and a testimony.
So the first time I walked into that cemetery and I saw the condition that it was in, I felt like my ancestors had been forgotten. That they hadn't been honored, and that while their lives were very worthy to us, they were not worthy to others. So today helps to reaffirm their value and their importance. And it lets me talk about their stories again. And to me, that's really important. That's how they never die. My great-great-grandfather was George Carpenter Jr. He served in the 109th U.S. Sea Teams, Company C, and he came to Cincinnati at the end of the Civil War and bought property in what's now part of Avondale. And he bought enough property that he could share it. So when other free Black folks came forward, he was able to sell them land so they could begin to build their homes in their dreams. And he went on to become constable of Mill Creek Township from 1899 to 1901.
And his wife's name?
His wife's name was Elsie.
Elsie.
I don't know how they met. She was from Virginia, but they came here and they established a life here and roots that are still growing deep and strong in Avondale and in Madisonville. Yeah. So I talked to them yesterday when we met to visit them, and I told them, thank you. And I told them, this is going to change.
Yeah.
We actually named our son after George Carpenter. So that's his first and his middle names. And when they were little, I used to tell them stories about George Carpenter and his wife, and we'd stand in front of their portraits, and I'd tell them what little I knew. Now, he tells those stories to his daughter, and I look forward to the time when I can bring them all here and say, this is where we know of our history. It started with this map. It makes us feel that this is something that can be accomplished, that can be done. And I think it's good for us to feel that we have a part and a role to play. Just as our ancestors moved us forward, now is this opportunity for us to move forward in terms of making sure all the funds are there, to make sure that their memories are preserved and shared.
So this is a celebration of place and a celebration of history and preserving something that's not just important to Cincinnati or the state of Ohio, but it's an American story. And the people that are in this cemetery represent what America stands for and what we aspire to be.
The cemetery story began long before these grounds were established. In 1848, the United Colored American Association established an African American cemetery in what was then the rural community of Avondale. The UCAA was one of Cincinnati's most important 19th century African American organizations dedicated to advancing the welfare, dignity, and self-determination of the Black community. One of its most enduring accomplishments was creating that sacred burial place where African Americans could lay their loved ones to rest with dignity and respect. As the surrounding community grew and became more affluent, opposition to the African American cemetery increased.
I became involved with this project in 2019. I had been running a small educational tourism company, and Chris Hanlon, our historian, approached me at that time saying, you know, there's this cemetery in Madisonville, and I think it's really cool, and I think we should focus on it to teach people about it. And he and I ended up going to church and said, we are here with servants' hearts. Tell us how we can support you in this task. And we've been both involved, plus many more. So my main role is being the advocate and telling people about it. I've brought in many, many partners and colleagues. I've helped with the grant writing. I wrote the plaque. I've helped with fundraising. I currently manage their historic archive, which, if I can put a plug in for that, we have been told that our archive is one of a kind. We have advisors from the National Archives of the United States, and they say that there's nothing other similar in the country existent. Our archive starts from the 1880s forward, and as a collection of Black history, it is the most intact and unprocessed archive that we know of burial records.
In 1880, legislation was enacted that ultimately enabled the cemetery to be declared a public nuisance and closed. The members of the ACAA strongly opposed that decision and fought to preserve the cemetery. So what some viewed as a nuisance, others viewed as the resting place of their parents, grandparents, veterans, leaders, loved ones, and friends. Rather than allow the memory of their ancestors to be erased, the association purchased 11.5 acres here in Madisonville and undertook the extraordinary task of relocating graves, headstones, and remains to this site. The cemetery was formally dedicated in 1883. Legible tombstone on these grounds dates back to 1832, reminding us that the history preserved here reaches back generations into the cemetery's relocation.
Yeah, I think it's just typical sometimes of places that end up being forgotten in our city in different places. And so, being next door to our Madisonville Operations Center, we wanted to be a good neighbor, and it's this idea of how do we bring this really special place back to glory so that we can celebrate the people that are there. A little emotional because a lot of times people don't know that I work at Fifth Third and I'll stand out here, and they're just so appreciative of the fact that we're bringing this beautiful cemetery back to its glory. And yeah, no, it's emotional, it's personal, but it's also very gratifying as well.
The United Colored American Cemetery is a living record of African American history in Cincinnati. More than 4,000 individuals are believed to be buried within these grounds. It is the final resting place of Underground Railroad figures, writers, politicians, business people, artists, clergy, civil rights leaders, educators, military veterans, and many, many other people whose lives and accomplishments continue to inspire us. By the middle of the 20th century, the cemetery had fallen into serious decline. The original United Colored American Association no longer existed, and the future of the historic site was uncertain. Following legal challenges and years of neglect, a court-appointed board attempted to oversee the cemetery, but lacked the resources necessary to restore and maintain the property. At that critical time, Councilman Charles P. Taft, who also served as a trustee of Spring Grove Cemetery, sought a permanent solution. He recognized that Union Baptist Church, founded in 1831, had already demonstrated years and years of successful stewardship through its own historic cemetery, in Price Hill, the Union Baptist Cemetery, which the church had owned and maintained since 1864. Union Baptist Church had both the commitment and the proven ability to preserve sacred burial grounds and honor the memories of those interred there. In 1968, ownership of the United Colored American Cemetery was transferred to Union Baptist Church, ensuring that this historic site would remain in the care of a trusted institution dedicated to preserving African American history. For nearly 6 decades, Union Baptist Church has served as steward of the cemetery, preserving its records, maintaining its grounds, and protecting its historic significance. In 2022, the United Colored American Cemetery was officially listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
In addition to the $50,000 and the $200,000 match that we're going to put into their foundation so that they can create an endowment to be able to take care of the cemetery in perpetuity, we're going to probably put about $1 million of our own dollars into the cemetery as well to help beautify it. So as you heard, everything from fencing to other areas that we're going to put into the cemetery so that's a special place for people to go and celebrate. Yeah, this means a lot to me personally because this is something that we've been working on for a couple years with the church because we were trying to figure out how can we do something that's sustainable but that's really important to the city. So this day is not only the finish line, but it actually is the beginning of an outstanding partnership that we'll have with Union Baptist Church and United Colored American Cemetery.
I just feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world. This has been life-changing, for sure. To have an invitation to be present among such a congregation and such a community, I don't take that for granted. I hope I don't take that for granted.
There are numerous volunteer efforts being undertaken by Union Baptist Church cemeteries and the many other African American cemeteries throughout the church, throughout the country, that is. Clearly, there's a tremendous need for a unified, nationwide effort to help repair, preserve, and restore these sacred burial grounds, which are indeed an integral component of the heritage of the United States of America.
Finally today, folks came to Hamilton, Ohio from near and far recently to celebrate the life of a real hero, a World War II veteran who lived to be 100 years old. This was their final salute to a man whose journey was part of an important story in American history.
Present. Arms.
United States Marine Corporal Robert Watson, a member of the Montford Point Marines, known as the first African-American Marines to serve our nation.
He was definitely my grandfather, loving and also a hero. I don't think I recognized the hero part of his life until I became older.
Mr. Watson and his Montford Point Marines put their lives on the line overseas for our democracy, while at the same time, they advanced the cause of civil rights here at home.
And he exemplified the motto that failure is not an option. We saw that in life before we heard the story behind that motto and began to understand the story of the Montford Point legacy, Marine. It was incredible.
I've known Mr. Watson and his family for more than 35 years. He was strong, devoted, passionate, and honest. A family man, full of faith, whose life was a testimony that there is no secret what God can do. Can you see? He has a street named after him in Hamilton, and he was awarded one of the nation's highest honors, a Congressional Medal. Mr. Watson worked at General Electric in the airplane engines division for many years. His life was built on integrity and perseverance.
Going back to night school, it's about 17 and a half years that he went back to night school from 1946 until 1964. Talk about a commitment. He started as a draftsman with General Electric and realized, I can do this work. And all it takes is a degree. Well, most of us would say okay to that. Would we say okay to 17 years of night school on top of having a family and working a full-time job, committed? I don't know if I could stick with that for 17 years, and yet he shows us it's possible. And that's his life, that you look at every single thing he's done and you have to say to yourself, of course it's possible, because he's already demonstrated that. How can we not love him? Love him, honor him, respect him, be inspired by him, everything.
But his most significant legacy is family.
So that means that he was always present, that he could fix anything that needed to be fixed. He would drive across the country and be there for any of his family members. He made sure that we were present on Christmas dinner, even if that meant driving to Dayton, Ohio in a snowstorm to make sure we arrived there. He was a present man. But we already saw evidence of how he was living those characters in quiet ways, steady ways. He was never the loudest voice in the room. He was quiet and steady. The legacy that he lived and his example of perseverance and commitment to family, when you recognize a man who's been married for 78 years. That is incredible, that we have two people who are pillars of our family with a marriage that lasts 78 years. And their love for each other was always obvious within the reality of, yes, they could bicker back and forth and they would always smile and be there together for each other. And his last breath was right there with my grandmother. 78 years with each other the entire time.
Well, that does it for the program today. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Curtis Fuller. I'll see you next time for another edition of Let's Talk Cincy. Until then, have a good day and a better day tomorrow.